Okay, so several of you have asked me some variation of what is spiritual awakening, or more specifically, what causes spiritual awakening? It's funny, many people talk to their friends or confidants about spiritual, seemingly magical moments to see what their friends think about it. But what they are really wondering is, how do I know if I'm having a spiritual awakening? Or am I imagining I'm somehow special because I need to feel special in a time when the exterior world has way less opportunity to express that through outings with friends and the like? There is a lot of misinformation about what it means to have a spiritual awakening or to be spiritually enlightened. The first thing I want to express to you is that being spiritually awakened is not the same as being spiritually perfect. Your spirit is already perfect, and perfection is not a realistic expectation for any human being. Also, there is no one-size-fits-all approach to having a spiritual awakening. It's a very personal experience. So, as you take this wonderfully imperfect journey towards spiritual awakening, offer yourself some grace and be on the lookout for these top 5 signs of having a spiritual awakening. Allow the critical mind to relax and quiet yourself as we go through these talks together. You're probably closer than you think to answering that question. What is spiritual awakening for yourself? A spiritual awakening can be like a sudden flash of brilliance. It can wash over you quietly in a gentle wave. It can come during a difficult moment of utter surrender, or it can just occur to you one day as you're taking a drive. I really love to check in with a few of the masters when I'm discussing spiritual awakening with people, because there really is no one way to describe it. Deepak Chopra says that awakening happens when we are no longer existing in a dream world where everything is filtered through the ego. So what causes a spiritual awakening? Well, Chopra says that instead of the mind being completely consumed with thoughts of the past and the future, you become almost simultaneously aware of your individual self and the connection between you and everything else. The Dalai Lama speaks to spiritual awakening happening when our afflicted emotions, jealousy, hatred, fear, can be put to the end. He says, when you realize that these emotions are only temporary, that they are always pass on like clouds in the sky, you also realize that they can ultimately be abandoned. And you do not let the behavior of others destroy your inner peace. Now, doesn't that mean that once you become spiritually awakened, you never make another mistake again? We are only human, but it does mean that you learn something meaningful, something you can't unlearn, something that really changes you for the better and makes you feel more aligned with your true purpose. And that is certainly aligned with what causes a spiritual awakening. That special something that you finally learn. And when I say learn, I don't mean you learn about it like when you're in school and you need to read about something in a book and now you know something you never knew before. Knowing something and really learning it are not the same thing, unfortunately, right? If only all the things we know automatically changed us for the better, we'd never make the same mistake twice. But if you're like most of the people in the world, you've had to learn a thing or two multiple times, right? That makes me think of how they say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. I think by that definition, the whole world can be pretty darned insane. It's pretty interesting how Deepak Chopra says that what causes spiritual awakening is when we no longer exist in a dream world where everything is filtered through our ego. It's as though we are all creating our own mad worlds. And what is spiritual awakening for you will depend on what kind of world your ego has created. Whatever it is exactly that we must awaken from seems to be varying greatly, depending on the individual, of course. What you've been through, what kind of coping mechanisms you've had to develop to survive the difficulties, what your relationships have been like from the time of your birth. All these things and more play a part in the spiritual healing process that leads to a spiritual awakening. So like I said, what causes a spiritual awakening is not a one-size-fits-all journey. It's your journey. And if you want to experience a spiritual awakening, if that is your desire, then there are some fundamental and beautifully simple things you can do to help put you on that path. And I'm going to talk to you about them in just a minute. But first, I want to point out that you may already be on your journey towards having your own spiritual awakening. And a person typically doesn't just have one spiritual awakening, like kaboom, everything all at once. Spiritual awakenings are always important, but sometimes they are big and loud, like trumpeting epiphanies, and other times they are gentle, like soft whisper that touches your heart. There are some telltale signs that you are attracting a spiritual awakening into your life, and I have the top 5 signs to share with you just now. Number 1 is observing your own patterns. So circling back to the whole doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results thing, it turns out that is something we all do in one way or another. Sometimes it shows up in the work environments we choose. Sometimes it shows up in the relationships we choose. Sometimes it shows up in the behaviors we choose. Whatever the patterns we may have, the reality is that we all have them. And some of them are holding us back or keeping us small or protecting us from the threats that no longer exist. They say that when we are in the fog, you can't see the fog, which to me is a very accurate analogy, because when we look over our choices in hindsight, it can seem so obvious that we are setting ourselves up for whatever followed. But when we are right in the thick of it all, it somehow seems so much more difficult to recognize. Even if we've been in this situation before, it's baffling, really. And intelligence has nothing to do with it. Like we were talking about earlier, my dear, you can know a lot of things, and that doesn't automatically mean you know how to apply them to your life. So with that in mind, I want you to really emphasize that the number 1 top sign that you are attracting a spiritual awakening into your life isn't putting a stop to your own patterns. It's observing your own patterns, having a heightened awareness, recognizing them in a moment and making note of them, seeing yourself do the things you don't want to do anymore and witnessing it from an observational point of view. This awareness truly is what I call a spiritual awakening to start to bloom. Number 2 is noticing synchronicities. The world is buzzing with synchronicities, just swirling with them all the time, every day. And the average person just going through the motions, keeping their eyes down and their heads full of traffic, can go months without even ever noticing a single synchronicity. So what is a synchronicity? Psychologist Carl Jung used the term to describe circumstances that appear meaningfully related, yet lack a casual connection. Have you ever focused really hard on a name or a number or a specific time on the clock, and then it seemed as though for the next week, everywhere you went, you seemed to see it everywhere? The universe is always listening and responding to the things we focus on, and many people don't realize that it is happening every single day. Most people don't notice synchronicity unless it's majorly noticeable, like when you think about someone for a few moments one night, missing them or wanting to see them, and then the next day you walk right into them at the supermarket. But truly, little synchronicities happen every single day, and when you begin to notice them and begin to recognize them for what they are, meaningful, even though they appear to be unrelated, that is definitely a part of what causes spiritual awakening in so many of us. So, are you seeing more and more of these synchronicities? Number 3, increased awareness of inner peace. Restoring inner peace is one of the main things that I help people achieve as a spiritual practitioner. Through my experience, I found that the presence of inner peace means the absence of inner critic. When we are stuck in our heads worrying about things we can't control and spinning out over what may or may not happen tomorrow, usually the inner critic has free rein to browbeat you, belittle you, and inflame your sense with feelings of jealousy, anger, and resentment. It's no small task to silence that pesky inner critic after we've given it free rein for so long, because we don't often even notice it's there. We become accustomed to being too hard on ourselves, feeling unworthy of certain things, and unhappy about things we can't change. When heading for a spiritual awakening, you'll find your mind is more often living in the present moment, enjoying small pleasures, noticing synchronicities, content on focus only on what the very next step is, instead of reeling over how long it's going to take to make the next 1,000 steps. Inner peace is actually a very comfortable and natural state to be in, even if you haven't experienced it in years. The first time you do, you might not even know that it's inner peace you've achieved, because it just feels good and simple and normal. That is the result of silencing the inner critic. And if you want help with that, I actually have an amazing guide program called the 7-Day Reset for Reclaiming Inner Peace. And I'm going to put an exclusive link in the description for you, because it can definitely serve you on your journey towards a spiritual awakening. Number 4 is letting go of labels. Now, this telltale sign of spiritual awakening addresses the ego. And our ego isn't a bad thing. And we need it. A lot of our instincts live in there. A lot of our best and most unique parts of our personality live there. But the problem with letting the ego run our lives is that the ego doesn't always deal in the truth. The ego is very susceptible to suggestion and isn't always rooted in reality. The ego is also where we hold on to labels that were given to us, limiting beliefs that keep us from seeing new possibilities for ourselves. An example would be if a parent with a small child continuously labeled that child by telling people, oh, she's shy, or he's such a klutz, or she's the most beautiful girl in school, or he's the best soccer player on the team. And they can also be labels we give ourselves, like, I'm always late, I always win, or I hate working out. You'll notice that not all of these labels are necessarily negative, but they are still labels that can define us in a way that makes it difficult for us to grow. When a person is heading for a spiritual awakening, it's very common that our personal attachments to these worldly perceptions of ourselves start to lose their importance. It's a sign that you are close to truly recognizing that you are so much more than a human form. You are a spiritual being that's having a human experience. And finally, number 5 is increased level of empathy. Okay, so believe it or not, this is one you can actually be surprisingly jarring. Because when we are caught up with our thinking mind and we're ignoring certain things that seem too hard to face, and we are all wrapped up in our daily busyness, what can happen is that our emotional spectrum can become limited. Life can become very black and white. I'm either busy, angry, or fine. You know what I mean? So when you are doing the work to bring about a spiritual awakening, there is a gradual thaw that occurs, and you slowly start to regain access to more nuanced versions of your emotional spectrum. The reason I say it's a little jarring is because feeling emotions you don't normally recognize can be quite interesting, like, whoa, what is this? I think I'm excited, or I think I'm perplexed, or I think I'm awe. And of these many nuanced emotions, increased levels of empathy is one of the most prominent emotions to emerge when heading for a spiritual awakening. This is because once you truly awaken to truth of how we are all spiritual beings, having imperfect, vulnerable, and complex human experiences, and that we are all connected, a lot of the judgments that can block our empathy start to fall away. So now you know the top 5 signs that you are headed for a spiritual awakening. They are observing your own spiritual patterns, noticing synchronicities, increased awareness of inner peace, letting go of the labels, and increased levels of empathy. Here are some practices to assist you with finding your own answers to the questions, what is spiritual awakening? Meditation. And if you aren't familiar with this practice, let me just tell you that it doesn't need to be super time consuming to be effective. Even 5 minutes a day can make a difference. And it helps to use guided meditations if you aren't too sure how to do it yourself. Actually, you should check out my Shamanic Journey guided meditation. It's perfect for this. I'll put that link for you below. Spending time outdoors. Connecting with nature on a regular basis is wonderful for calming the nervous system and aligning your energy with calm and natural surroundings. Being of service to others. What better way to get out of your own head than to spend time with someone in need? And making daily gratitude list. This is a spiritual super tool because not only does it help redirect your thoughts towards abundance and positivity, it also helps attract more of the things you really, really want in life. And it's even a great way to start triggering amazing synchronicities. Thank you so much for joining me today. I had so much fun talking to you about what causes a spiritual awakening. And even though there may not be any one answer to explain what is a spiritual awakening, I hope you feel excited to take the journey for yourself. I'd love to help you in any way that I can. So definitely don't forget to sign up for the 7-day reset. The exclusive link is in the descriptions. If you enjoyed this episode, hey, please subscribe to my channel because I release a new masterclasses every Tuesday and Thursday. Think of it as a spiritual maintenance and keep going strong. You are closer than you think, and always remind yourself along the way that love is spirit and spirit is love. Namaste, my friends. Thanks for watching. Don't miss out on a single thing. Subscribe below. And here's something else I think you'll enjoy. Namaste.